"We won't pay your college tuition. You don't deserve it." Those were the words that shattered me the moment my parents decided Camille, my twin sister, was worth every penny and I was worth nothing. We had both opened the same email that morning, both accepted into the prestigious data science program at Westbrook. I screamed with joy, my hands shaking, ready to celebrate a future I had fought hard to earn. But in the kitchen, under the soft clink of coffee mugs, my news was brushed aside. All the cheers, all the hugs, all the pride flowed only toward Camille. My phone still glowed with the word congratulations, yet I felt invisible in my own family. In that moment, the contrast was brutal. 2 daughters, the same dream, but only one chosen. And I knew, even then, I would have to fight for everything on my own. Growing up, Camille and I were twins only in the most technical sense 43 minutes apart. 2 girls with the same birthday, but completely different roles in our parents' eyes. From the very beginning, Camille was the golden child, the one they paraded at family gatherings, the one they boasted about to neighbors and church friends. I was the independent one, the daughter they insisted didn't need extra attention, as if neglect were a badge of honor. The difference showed up in small ways at first. Camille got the Barbie dream house for Christmas, wrapped with a bow that probably cost more than my stocking fillers. I got socks and a lecture about how practical gifts last longer. On weekends, she had dance lessons, art tutors, even a photography class when she mentioned it once in passing. I got told that creativity was indulgence and that discipline mattered more. Birthdays were the hardest. Hers were sweet 16 parties with DJs and catering. Mine were pizza nights where Mom muttered something about keeping things simple. I learned early on not to expect equality. When high school rolled around, the gap widened into a chasm. Camille got a math tutor who came 3 times a week. I was told to be proud of figuring things out on my own. She got rides to extracurricular activities. I caught the late bus, coming home after dark with cold fingers and a heavy backpack. Teachers noticed the difference, too. They'd praise her polished projects without realizing half the time I'd helped her finish them. But in our house, effort didn't matter. Presentation did. The real betrayal came during senior year. Like every student staring down tuition bills, I asked my parents if they could co-sign a student loan for me. It wasn't even about paying my way entirely, just a signature that would make me eligible for the aid I desperately needed. They looked at me like I had asked for the moon. "We can't put ourselves at risk," Dad said flatly, closing his laptop. "It'll teach you responsibility," Mom added, as if throwing me into financial quicksand was a life lesson I should be grateful for. I swallowed the rejection, but I never forgot it. What stung wasn't just the refusal, but the double standard. When Camille wanted new pointe shoes for ballet, they were on the doorstep by Friday. When she hinted at a prep course for the SAT, they signed the check without hesitation. But when I asked for something that could actually change my future, the answer was no. Their refusal wasn't about money, it was about who they believed deserved investment. So I found my own way. I spent hours hunched over scholarship applications, writing essays until my wrists ached. I flipped burgers at the diner off Main Street, folded clothes in the back room of a retail store, babysat kids who had more toys than I could dream of. Every dollar went into a mason jar on my desk, a crude savings account that felt like a lifeline. The nights were long, my eyes gritty from exhaustion. But I kept reminding myself, independence was the gift they claimed to give me. Fine. I would wield it like a weapon. That's how Aunt Mel came into the picture. She was my mother's younger sister, the black sheep of the family because she never married rich or climbed a corporate ladder. But she understood survival. When she heard I had nowhere stable to live during those first months of college, she offered me her pull-out sofa. "It's lumpy," she warned, pressing a grocery bag of snacks into my arms. "But it's yours." That sofa became more than furniture, it became a symbol of every sacrifice. Every night I lay awake, listening to the neighbor's TV through the walls, and told myself that even this was better than begging for help from people who had already told me I wasn't worth it. Camille, of course, never had to think about sofas or scholarships or side jobs. She walked into Westbrook with a fully funded tuition package, an allowance for living expenses, and parents who showed up at move-in day with balloons. I arrived at Aunt Mel's apartment with 2 duffel bags, a borrowed laptop, and a determination that burned hotter than my resentment. Looking back, the imbalance was obvious, almost cartoonish. But at the time, it just felt like my reality. One twin chosen, the other overlooked. I didn't yet know how far that favoritism would stretch, or how deeply it would cut. All I knew was that if I wanted a future, I couldn't wait for their permission. I would have to carve it out myself, even if it meant blistered hands, empty pockets, and a back molded to the shape of a pull-out sofa. Scholarship applications became my nightly ritual. I sat at Aunt Mel's kitchen table with a stack of forms, tabs open on my overheating laptop, the smell of her neighbor's curry sneaking through the thin apartment walls. Each rejection email felt like another door slamming shut. But every once in a while, a tiny victory slipped through 500 here, 1, 0 there. Small amounts, barely enough to cover textbooks, but they kept me afloat. Each letter that started with congratulations was like oxygen after weeks of holding my breath. To make it work, I worked myself raw. At 5 in the morning, I tied on an apron and poured coffee for half-awake commuters, my hands smelling like espresso grounds long after my shift ended. At noon, I filed books in the library, the quiet aisles becoming both my workplace and my sanctuary. By evening, I sat in a call center cubicle, headset digging into my ears as I apologized to strangers about their broken Wi-Fi connections. When my shift ended, I stumbled home, collapsing onto Aunt Mel's pull-out sofa, my body buzzing from exhaustion but my mind racing with deadlines and formulas. Every paycheck disappeared as quickly as it came. Tuition installments, rent money for Aunt Mel, groceries, a secondhand Chromebook I bought when my old laptop died mid-semester. There was no margin for error, no oops fund, no safety net. Meanwhile, Camille walked the same campus with a designer tote bag swinging from her arm and bubble tea in hand, her hair curled in perfect waves. She uploaded ski trip photos to Instagram while I counted quarters for instant noodles. Sometimes I saw her across the quad with her polished friends, their laughter loud, their schedules light. She never looked my way. Not once did she stop to ask how I was managing. She didn't have to. She lived in a different reality, one funded by the same parents who told me I wasn't worth a tuition check. And somehow, watching her glide through life on a cushion of privilege stung less than realizing our parents never asked about me either. They didn't call. They didn't visit. Their golden child was enough for them. At first, I tried not to compare. I told myself I was learning resilience, discipline, skills no money could buy. But late at night, lying awake on that creaky pullout, the bitterness slipped in. They said I didn't deserve tuition. Maybe I thought, I'll earn a degree worth more than their approval. Maybe I'll prove them wrong. Not with their money, but with mine. The weight of independence was crushing, but it also fueled me. Each scholarship check reminded me that strangers believed in me more than my own parents did. Each customer I served, each patron I helped, each call I endured was another piece of proof. I could keep moving forward, even when the people who should have lifted me up had chosen to push me down. There were days when my body begged me to quit. When my eyes blurred during lectures and my hands trembled over the keyboard from too much caffeine and too little sleep. But I refused to drop. Not because I wanted their validation anymore, I was past that. I wanted something bigger, proof that I could build a life without their permission. The contrast between Camille and me grew into a living metaphor, visible to anyone who looked closely. She floated on luxury, blind to the cracks in the ground beneath her. I clawed at every inch of progress, digging my fingernails into survival until they bled. And while she lived like tomorrow was guaranteed, I lived like every decision determined whether tomorrow would come at all. I learned to stop waiting for fairness. It wasn't coming. But I also learned that injustice could become fuel. Every slammed door pushed me to knock harder somewhere else. Every cruel dismissal echoed in my head as I walked into another shift, another lecture, another sleepless night. And beneath it all, one thought kept pulsing in my chest. If they didn't think I deserved tuition, fine. I'd build a future so undeniable that someday they would have to face the truth that the daughter they dismissed had outgrown them, not because of their support, but in spite of their neglect. It happened on a quiet Wednesday night. I had just finished a client call, heating up leftover stir-fry in the microwave, when a knock rattled my apartment door. The sound didn't match the hour. It was sharp, insistent, more like an interruption than a visit. When I opened it, my parents stood there, pale, tight-faced. Their presence in my hallway felt like a ghost sighting. For nearly 2 years, they hadn't once visited me. Not when I moved into Aunt Mel's pull-out sofa. Not when I scraped enough savings to rent this tiny studio. Not even a text on my birthday. And now, suddenly, they appeared at my door, stiff in their coats as if they didn't quite belong in my world anymore. "Jessica," my mother said at last, her voice taut. "We need to talk. It's about Camille." Of course it was. They didn't come to apologize. They didn't come to acknowledge the years I spent working 3 jobs just to stay afloat. They came because their golden child had faltered, and now they needed the daughter they had abandoned. I didn't invite them in right away. I leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed, waiting. Dad's jaw flexed. He pulled out a folded letter and shoved it into my hand. It was a final notice from a landlord. Past due balance, thousands of dollars. Mom added quietly. "She hasn't paid rent in months." My stomach tightened. "I thought you were covering her rent." "We were," Dad snapped, defensive. "We sent her money every month." "You assumed she was paying," I finished for him. Mom's cheeks flushed crimson. There it was. Their blind faith in Camille. The same blind faith that had once cost me everything. And now it had backfired. They spoke over each other, voices frayed. She wasn't answering calls. She'd failed several courses. She was falling apart, and in their desperation, they came to me, as though I might know how to clean up Camille's mess. "Why would I know anything?" I said flatly. "We haven't spoken since freshman year. I'm not her babysitter." "You could still help," Mom said quickly. "She's your sister." That laugh came out of me before I could stop it, bitter, dry, with no humor in it at all. "Sister? You mean the one you chose over me? The one you funded while I pulled double shifts and slept on a couch?" Dad's face hardened. "That's not fair." "No," I snapped. "It's not. But it's true." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of my microwave behind me. For a moment, Mom's eyes glistened. But instead of apology, she whispered, "You've changed." "Yes," I said. "I had to." They tried again, pleaded, softened their voices. "We're not asking for much. Just talk to her. Just help us find her. Your family." I stepped back, shaking my head. "You stopped being my family the day you told me I didn't deserve the education you gave her." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. My parents flinched as though I had struck them. For the first time, I wasn't the small, overlooked daughter standing in her sister's shadow. I was someone who had clawed her way into independence, and they couldn't recognize me anymore. Dad's tone turned cold. "For someone who complains about being abandoned, you're doing a good job abandoning us." I didn't flinch. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just refusing to be your backup plan." I held the door open, my meaning clear. Mom's mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no sound came out. Dad's eyes burned with unspoken words, but he swallowed them. They walked out into the hallway, their shoulders stiff, carrying the weight of their own choices. When the door clicked shut, I stood still, breathing hard. The echoes of their visit pressed against me, but beneath the sting was something solid, a boundary. For years they had written the rules of who I was supposed to be. But tonight, for the first time, I had the final word. The weeks after my parents' visit felt strange, like the silence after a storm. They had left my apartment with stiff shoulders and empty hands, but I knew it wasn't the end. They were the type who never truly accepted no, who believed persistence could turn guilt into currency. I expected another knock, another plea. Instead, what came was opportunity. What began as side hustles, data cleanup, small business analytics, scraping together contracts, had grown into something bigger. By my third year of freelancing, I had steady clients, referrals, and even a small team of contractors. I filed as an LLC. I built a simple website that got traction. And then, one of my projects caught the attention of a local magazine. They called it Grit, but I knew it was survival. The piece was titled, "From Couch Surfing to CEO in 3 Years." That article was the spark. My inbox filled with new inquiries. One client led to another. I upgraded my tiny studio to a small but sunlit one-bedroom. I bought a real desk. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was hanging on by a thread. I was weaving something of my own. And then came the panel. A youth entrepreneurship conference wanted me to speak about resilience, about building from nothing. My mentor nudged me to accept, reminding me that stories matter, especially to those still clawing their way out of their own holes. I stood backstage the day of the panel, heart pounding in the borrowed blazer I had bought secondhand but tailored to fit like armor. The crowd buzzed, hundreds of faces waiting for stories of ambition and survival. But when I peeked out, my breath caught. Third row. My parents, sitting together as though they belonged there, stone-faced, stiff, as if they had wandered in by accident. Only it wasn't an accident. I knew then they had seen the article, maybe even the conference program. They hadn't come for me. They'd come to reclaim me, to polish their image by attaching themselves to my success. For a split second, panic gripped me. Memories of their dismissal, the words, "You don't deserve it," came flooding back. But then the stage lights flared, bright and sharp, and something shifted. Out there, under that spotlight, I wasn't the overlooked twin anymore. I wasn't the girl scraping for rent. I was the speaker, the founder, the one people had come to listen to. I stepped onto the stage, each step deliberate. The lights blinded me to the crowd, but I could still feel their presence, my parents, in the shadows of the audience, waiting to see if I would extend them a rope back into my life. I didn't. I told my story honestly, about the scholarships that barely covered books, about the 3 jobs that nearly broke me, about the nights I coded until my hands cramped. I talked about rejection and resilience, about how being told I didn't deserve something became fuel to build a life on my own terms. And I let the silence stretch after I said, family doesn't always mean support. Sometimes it means learning how to protect yourself, even from the people who raised you. The applause was thunderous, a sound that wrapped around me like proof. And when I glanced down into the rows of faces, I saw my parents, but not as I once did. They were smaller, blurred by the light that wasn't meant for them. For once, they were the ones sitting in the shadows while I stood illuminated. Afterward, I didn't seek them out. I didn't give them the chance to corner me, to twist the moment into another plea or performance. I walked straight out of that hall, my bag slung over my shoulder, my future firmly in my hands. That was the turning point. Not when they came begging, not when they shoved overdue notices into my hand. The real turning point was realizing I never owed them the stage, never owed them my success. They had made their choice years ago when they told me I wasn't worth investing in. Now, the world knew differently, and so did I. The light was mine, and they would have to live in the shadow of what they'd thrown away. In the months that followed, the ripple effects were undeniable. My parents lost the house they once flaunted on Christmas cards, and Camille quietly dropped out. Her designer bags traded for retail shifts and borrowed couches. They were left with the silence of their own choices. And for once, I wasn't the one carrying the weight. Meanwhile, I found something stronger than revenge healing. I came home each night to my small apartment, brewed a cup of tea, and sat by the window as snow drifted outside. The peace wasn't loud, but it was mine. I even started a scholarship fund for first-gen students, kids who'd been told, "You don't deserve it," just like I had. Because survival doesn't mean closing the door behind you, it means building a path for others, too. When I look back now, I know the truth. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. They stole my chance, but I built my life, and I never looked back. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Share your own experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And remember, family doesn't define your worth. You do.